The Hidden Conversations of Trees, a journey into the forest's secret language. Close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself standing in the heart of an ancient forest. The air is cool and damp, wrapping around you like a gentle mist. A soft breeze stirs the towering trees, rustling their leaves in a slow, rhythmic conversation. Sunlight filters through the dense canopy above, painting golden patterns that shift and dance across the forest floor. The scent of rich earth, damp moss, and pine needles fills your lungs as you take a slow, deep breath. At first, the forest seems still, peaceful, silent. But this silence is an illusion. Beneath your feet, hidden from sight, an intricate web of communication pulses with life, a whispering network, ancient and unseen. This is the hidden world of trees, their secret language, spoken in the soil itself. Imagine, just for a moment, if you could hear what the trees were saying. What stories would they tell? What messages would they send? Would you hear their warnings, their wisdom, their silent whispers of survival? The truth is, the forest is alive in ways we are only beginning to understand. Beneath your feet, stretching for miles in every direction, an invisible web exists. A network made not of wires and data, but of roots and fungi. It has a name: the Wood Wide Web. At the heart of this system are delicate, thread-like fungi called mycorrhizae. These filaments weave their way through the soil, intertwining with the roots of trees and plants in an underground symphony of connection. Think of it as the forest's internet, a natural communication system that has existed for millions of years, long before humans ever built their own. But this isn't just a network, it's an economy. Trees use it to trade, to warn, to support one another. Nutrients, water, even chemical messages travel along these fungal highways, ensuring that no tree in the forest stands alone. A single tree, isolated from the network, struggles, but a tree connected to the Wood Wide Web is part of something greater, a system of sharing, of balance, of silent communication that ensures the survival of the whole. Deep within the forest, some trees are more than just trees. They are elders, mother trees, the largest, oldest trees that act as central hubs in this underground network. These giants are deeply connected to the forest around them, sending out sugar, minerals, and water to the younger trees and saplings that struggle to grow in the shadows. It's a form of nourishment, of care, a silent act of generosity from the oldest to the youngest. Scientific studies reveal that when a mother tree is cut down, the entire forest around it suffers. Saplings become weaker, growth slows. It's as if the heartbeat of the forest fades, leaving behind an orphaned woodland. Mother trees don't just give, they guide. They recognize their own offspring and provide extra support, ensuring their survival. They are, quite literally, the guardians of the forest. The trees do not work alone. The fungi that connect them are not mere bystanders. They too are part of this partnership. The mycorrhizal fungi act as gatekeepers of nutrients, absorbing minerals from the soil and delivering them to the trees in exchange for food in the form of sugars. It's a perfect balance. Trees cannot access certain nutrients on their own, and fungi cannot produce their own food. So they trade, forming a relationship built on mutual survival. A quiet, unseen act of cooperation that sustains the entire ecosystem. If we could shrink down to the size of a single root hair, we'd see something incredible. Thousands of tiny fungal strands wrapping themselves around the tree's roots like fine threads of silk. These threads stretch outward, searching, expanding, growing, extending the reach of the tree's root system by as much as 700%. This means a single tree, through its fungal partners, can pull in nutrients from far beyond its own reach. And because the fungi connect tree to tree, the entire forest benefits. The strong support the weak, the healthy nourish the struggling, and even dying trees give their last resources back into the network, ensuring the survival of the next generation. But this underground network isn't just for trading food, it's also a warning system. When a tree is under attack, by insects, by disease, it sends out distress signals through its roots, alerting nearby trees to prepare. In the African savanna, acacia trees release chemical signals into the air when giraffes start munching on their leaves. Nearby acacias smell the warning and immediately pump bitter-tasting toxins into their own leaves, making them unappetizing. But what's even more fascinating, scientists now believe trees also send these warnings through the roots, alerting their underground network of the danger before it arrives. Similar studies show that when insects attack a tree, its roots send signals down through the fungal network, triggering surrounding trees to start producing defensive compounds, almost like an immune system that protects the entire forest. It's a level of cooperation that challenges the idea of trees as passive, isolated beings. Instead, they act as a single, interconnected entity, a forest-wide intelligence that senses, responds, and adapts together. Imagine a world where humans operated in the same way, sensing danger before it arrives, warning others, and working together as a unified whole. We often think of trees as lone, silent sentinels, standing apart, living out their slow, quiet lives in solitude. But the truth is far more beautiful. A tree is never truly alone. It is part of a vast, whispering network, a family that stretches beyond what we can see. Perhaps, in the rush of modern life, we can learn something from the way forests communicate. The strongest trees are not the ones that grow the fastest or the tallest. The strongest trees are the ones that connect, the ones that share, support, and sustain the life around them. So the next time you walk through a forest, remember, beneath your feet, a conversation is happening. A quiet, ancient dialogue that has been going on for millions of years. You may not hear it, but it is there, in the roots, in the soil, in the whispering web of life beneath us all. And this is only the beginning. Imagine walking through an ancient forest. The sun is warm on your skin, and the air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The trees stand tall around you, their leaves swaying lazily in the wind. Everything feels still, peaceful. But then, something changes. A shift so subtle that you might not notice it at first. A single leaf trembles, though there is no breeze. A distant rustling moves in a way that seems deliberate. Something invisible is happening. You can't see it. You can't hear it. But beneath the surface, a message is traveling, urgent, electric, and silent. A tree has just been attacked, and the forest is responding. What if I told you that trees can sense danger, that they don't just passively endure the world around them, but actively communicate, warn, and even prepare for threats, just like animals do? A tree under attack does not stand alone. It sends out a cry, a whisper carried through the underground network of roots and fungi, reaching the ears, or rather, the roots, of those around it. The forest listens, and it reacts. When an insect starts chewing on a tree's leaves, the tree doesn't just sit there, helpless. It reacts. Within seconds, it releases invisible chemical signals, airborne distress calls that drift through the wind to nearby trees, like a silent alarm carried by the breeze. These chemical signals can warn neighboring trees to start producing their own defensive compounds before the attack even reaches them. Scientists have discovered that some plants and trees can change the taste of their leaves, making them bitter or even toxic in response to these warnings. Consider the acacia trees of the African savanna. When giraffes begin munching on their leaves, the trees release a warning gas, ethylene, that travels through the air. The message is clear: danger is near. Within minutes, nearby acacias detect this signal and begin pumping bitter-tasting tannins into their leaves, making themselves far less appetizing to the giraffes. The result? The giraffes, aware of this defense system, will often move upwind in search of trees that haven't yet received the warning. The trees have outmaneuvered them, using communication as their first line of defense. But the communication of trees isn't limited to the air. It runs deeper, literally. Beneath the surface, another kind of warning system is at work, carried not by the wind, but through an underground network of roots and fungal connections. The Wood Wide Web is more than just a network for sharing nutrients. It is also an information superhighway. When a tree senses a threat, whether from an insect infestation, disease, or drought, it sends electrical impulses through its roots. These signals travel through the mycorrhizal fungal network, alerting neighboring trees long before the threat reaches them. Experiments have confirmed this underground communication. Scientists at the University of British Columbia found that when a Douglas fir tree was infected with a disease, it sent out chemical signals underground. Nearby fir trees, still healthy, responded by increasing their production of defense compounds before they had even been infected. This preemptive response could mean the difference between life and death in a struggling forest. A similar experiment was conducted with tomato plants, revealing that plants could detect distress signals from neighboring roots and begin producing protective enzymes before any direct threat reached them. This means trees and plants are not only aware of their immediate surroundings, but also capable of anticipating danger and preparing for it. This ability to sense and respond to threats raises an even deeper question. Can trees remember? Can they learn from past attacks and adapt their defenses accordingly? Researchers believe the answer is yes. Studies show that trees store information about past attacks, adjusting their chemical defenses for future threats. Maple trees that have been attacked by caterpillars in the past learn to respond more quickly to similar attacks in the future, releasing their chemical warnings before the insects have even begun feeding. If trees can communicate, warn each other, and even remember danger, then perhaps forests are not just collections of individual trees, but interconnected communities, responsive, intelligent in their own way, and constantly evolving to protect one another. A single tree might be weak on its own, but a connected forest acts as one, a vast, ancient intelligence that has stood the test of time. And if the trees know this, what can we learn from them? Strength is found not in isolation, but in connection. Survival is not about standing alone, but about reaching out, sharing knowledge, and supporting those around us. Perhaps trees have always known what we are only beginning to understand, that the power of the individual is nothing compared to the power of the network. As we step further into this hidden world, a question emerges. If trees recognize threats, if they warn each other and protect their kin, then do they recognize their own families? Do they treat their own offspring differently from the other trees around them? Could it be that within the vast, tangled root systems of the forest, family bonds exist just as they do in the animal world? The answer to that question will take us deeper into the roots of the forest, where trees are not just growing together, but forming relationships, connections that may be far more personal than we ever imagined. As we step further into this hidden world, a question emerges. If trees recognize threats, if they warn each other and protect their kin, then do they recognize their own families? Do they treat their own offspring differently from the other trees around them? Could it be that within the vast, tangled root systems of the forest, family bonds exist just as they do in the animal world? For centuries, scientists and foresters believed that trees were simple, self-sufficient organisms, each competing with the others for sunlight, water, and nutrients. But recent discoveries have challenged that idea. Trees, it turns out, are not solitary beings. They recognize their relatives, they nurture their young, and they create vast support networks that extend far beyond what we can see. Deep beneath the forest floor, mother trees, ancient giants that have stood for centuries, are not just the tallest or the strongest. They are the caregivers of the forest. They know which saplings are their own offspring, and they send them extra nutrients through the wood wide web. They provide protection, shielding their young from the full force of the elements, allowing them to grow slowly, carefully, until they are strong enough to stand on their own. In one of the most groundbreaking studies on tree kinship, Dr. Suzanne Simard, a forest ecologist, discovered that mother trees prioritize their own seedlings over unrelated trees. In controlled experiments, researchers planted young saplings near a mother tree, some related, some not. The results were astonishing. The mother tree sent more carbon, water, and nutrients to its biological offspring through the underground fungal network, giving them an advantage in their early years. It even seemed to recognize which seedlings were struggling and increased its support accordingly. But the relationship goes both ways. The seedlings respond to the care of the mother tree by adjusting their root systems to avoid competing with her for nutrients. Instead of growing aggressive, sprawling roots that take up resources, they grow in ways that complement the forest, ensuring a harmonious balance between generations. This isn't just competition, it's cooperation at a level we never expected to see in plants. Beyond individual families, trees also form extended networks, almost like a forest-wide clan. If you were to map out the underground fungal network in an old-growth forest, You wouldn't see a chaotic tangle of roots and connections. You'd see clusters, family groups, where related trees work together, sharing resources, adjusting their growth to accommodate one another, and even warning each other of dangers. These clusters create a resilient ecosystem, where survival is not about individual strength, but about the strength of the whole. The loss of a mother tree can have devastating consequences for the forest. When loggers remove the oldest and largest trees, they are not just taking away a source of timber, they are breaking apart the very structure that holds the forest together. Young trees, suddenly cut off from their main source of nutrients and guidance, grow weaker. The fungal networks that once carried life-giving resources begin to wither. The entire community suffers. It's as if the heart of the forest has stopped beating. Yet, even in death, trees do not abandon their kin. When a mother tree senses it is dying, it performs one final act of generosity. It sends out the last of its stored nutrients to the surrounding trees, ensuring that what it has built will continue even after it is gone. This is a lesson in legacy, not just survival, but the passing on of wisdom and resources so that the next generation can thrive. If trees recognize their families, if they nurture their young and support one another in times of need, then what does that mean for how we see them? They are not just wooden pillars standing in the forest. They are part of a vast living network, a community that spans generations, a story written in roots and leaves, whispered through the soil in a language we are only beginning to understand. And if trees can do this, if they can recognize their own and ensure their well-being, then what else might they be capable of? Could it be that trees are not just reacting to their environment, but experiencing it in ways we cannot yet comprehend? Do they feel the loss of their kin? Do they sense joy when their offspring flourish? As we continue to uncover the intelligence of trees, we are drawn toward an even greater mystery. Can trees feel? If trees can recognize their families and prioritize their own offspring, could they also experience something akin to emotions? This question takes us deeper into the heart of the forest, beyond the physical connections of roots and fungi, and into the unseen, into the possibility that trees might not just react to their surroundings, but truly sense them in ways we've never considered. For decades, the idea that plants could feel was dismissed. Without a brain or a nervous system, how could they experience anything beyond mere biological processes? But science is beginning to challenge this assumption. Researchers have found that trees respond to stress in ways that mirror the physiological responses of animals. When subjected to drought, injury, or disease, trees emit ultrasonic distress sounds, tiny pulses that travel through the air, too high for human ears to hear. Scientists at Tel Aviv University recorded these sounds coming from dehydrated plants, leading to the idea that they might be sending out signals of distress, much like an animal might cry out in pain. Beyond audible signals, trees also release chemical compounds when injured, much like the human body produces hormones in response to stress. When a tree's bark is damaged, it floods the wound with protective compounds, creating a barrier against infection and sealing off the affected area. Some trees even release tannins or other chemicals into the air, substances that not only defend against further harm but also alert neighboring trees to do the same. But could trees also experience something akin to joy? While it's difficult to define joy outside of the human experience, research suggests that trees thrive in conditions that could be interpreted as beneficial or pleasurable. A tree growing in rich, nutrient-dense soil, surrounded by strong kin and abundant water, produces higher levels of sugars and strengthens its connections to the fungal network, reinforcing its place in the community. Just as a well-fed, well-loved animal flourishes, so too do trees that receive what they need to grow. If we consider joy as thriving, then perhaps trees experience it not as a fleeting emotion but as a state of being, a condition of health, balance, and connection. A tree that flourishes in its environment, supported by its kin and its underground network, is a tree that is truly alive in every sense of the word. And so, as we walk through the forest, we must ask ourselves, are the trees around us merely growing, or are they living? What if the whispers in the leaves, the pulses in the roots, and the silent songs carried on the wind are more than just biological functions? What if they are the echoes of something deeper, something ancient, something aware? Perhaps the wisdom of the trees has been hidden in plain sight all along. and perhaps, if we learn to listen, we will finally begin to understand. If trees can recognize their families and prioritize their own offspring, could they also experience something akin to emotions? This question takes us deeper into the heart of the forest, beyond the physical connections of roots and fungi, and into the unseen, into the possibility that trees might not just react to their surroundings, but truly sense them in ways we've never considered. For decades, the idea that plants could feel was dismissed. Without a brain or a nervous system, how could they experience anything beyond mere biological processes? But science is beginning to challenge this assumption. Researchers have found that trees respond to stress in ways that mirror the physiological responses of animals. When subjected to drought, injury, or disease, trees emit ultrasonic distress sounds, tiny pulses that travel through the air, too high for human ears to hear. Scientists at Tel Aviv University recorded these sounds coming from dehydrated plants, leading to the idea that they might be sending out signals of distress, much like an animal might cry out in pain. Beyond audible signals, trees also release chemical compounds when injured, much like the human body produces hormones in response to stress. When a tree's bark is damaged, it floods the wound with protective compounds, creating a barrier against infection and sealing off the affected area. Some trees even release tannins or other chemicals into the air, substances that not only defend against further harm but also alert neighboring trees to do the same. But could trees also experience something akin to joy? While it's difficult to define joy outside of the human experience, research suggests that trees thrive in conditions that could be interpreted as beneficial or pleasurable. A tree growing in rich, nutrient-dense soil, surrounded by strong kin and abundant water, produces higher levels of sugars and strengthens its connections to the fungal network, reinforcing its place in the community. Just as a well-fed, well-loved animal flourishes, so too do trees that receive what they need to grow. If we consider joy as thriving, then perhaps trees experience it not as a fleeting emotion but as a state of being, a condition of health, balance, and connection. A tree that flourishes in its environment, supported by its kin and its underground network, is a tree that is truly alive in every sense of the word. This raises an even more fascinating question. If trees can feel stress and thrive under ideal conditions, could they also have an internal rhythm, a heartbeat of sorts? Scientists in Hungary discovered that trees exhibit a faint, almost imperceptible pumping motion, something they call a heartbeat. Unlike the rapid beats of an animal heart, this rhythm occurs over the course of hours, subtly drawing water and nutrients up from the roots, sending them through the tree's vast vascular system. This slow, rhythmic movement, unseen to the naked eye, suggests a form of internal regulation, one that adjusts to the tree's needs, responding to drought, temperature shifts, and environmental changes in ways we are only beginning to understand. Perhaps the most mysterious part of this discovery is what it implies, that trees are not just passive structures reacting to their environment, but self-regulating, adjusting, and responding in a way that mirrors the inner workings of complex organisms. If they can balance their own well-being, if they can sense changes in their surroundings and react accordingly, then are they not in some way self-aware? We have long assumed that awareness belongs only to creatures with brains, but life does not always follow the rules we expect. In the forest, awareness may take a different shape, one that is slower, more deliberate, stretching across time rather than moments, moving through roots instead of neurons, carried on the wind instead of spoken aloud. We often think of intelligence as fast, as something requiring immediate responses and quick decisions. But what if intelligence can also be slow? What if wisdom is not just in speed, but in stillness? If trees are aware of their own existence, if they respond to their world in ways that suggest an understanding of it, then perhaps we must expand our definition of consciousness itself. So the next time you walk among the trees, consider the possibility that they are experiencing the world around them, not as we do, not with thoughts or words, but with signals, pulses, and slow, deliberate responses that shape their survival. Perhaps they do not think as we do. Perhaps they do not feel in ways we recognize. But perhaps, in their own way, they understand something about life that we have long forgotten. And if trees are aware, if they respond, if they adapt, if they thrive, then what lessons can we learn from them? What wisdom can we take from the forest and how can we apply it to our own lives? As we step deeper into this journey, we shift our focus from understanding the trees to learning from them, listening to the lessons they have to offer. And if trees are aware, if they respond, if they adapt, if they thrive, then what lessons can we learn from them? What wisdom can we take from the forest, and how can we apply it to our own lives? As we step deeper into this journey, we shift our focus from understanding the trees to learning from them, listening to the lessons they have to offer. For centuries, humans have looked to nature for guidance, for symbols of strength, resilience, and wisdom. But what if we have overlooked one of the greatest teachers of all? Trees have been here for millions of years, surviving ice ages, droughts, and environmental upheavals. Their survival has not been built on competition alone, but on connection. They teach us that strength is not found in standing alone, but in standing together. In a world that often emphasizes individualism, trees remind us of the power of community. A tree that grows in isolation is vulnerable. It must struggle for resources, fight against the wind, and endure the elements alone. But a tree within a forest is supported. Its roots intertwine with others, sharing water and nutrients. It is shielded by its neighbors, buffered against the wind, and strengthened by the interconnected network beneath the soil. The strongest forests are not those filled with solitary trees, but those where trees work together, forming alliances, nurturing their young, and ensuring the survival of future generations. This principle extends beyond the forest floor. The idea that we thrive through connection rather than competition is deeply relevant to human society. Imagine if we, like trees, recognize the importance of lifting one another up instead of fighting for dominance. What if, instead of seeing success as a solitary climb, we saw it as a shared effort, an exchange of wisdom, support, and nourishment that allows everyone to flourish? Beyond connection, trees also teach us the value of patience. In a world that moves faster every day, where instant gratification has become the norm, trees follow a different rhythm, one of slow, deliberate growth. A tree does not rush to reach the sky. It takes its time, growing only as conditions allow, ensuring that its foundation is strong before reaching for the light. It knows that true growth cannot be forced, that strength comes not from speed, but from steady, intentional progress. Perhaps this is a lesson for us as well. So often, we are told to hurry, to achieve, to produce, to move forward at all costs. But what if we embrace the wisdom of the trees? What if we allowed ourselves to slow down, to grow at our own pace, to trust that the right conditions will come in time? A tree does not rush to bloom before winter has passed. It waits, knowing that growth is most meaningful when it is aligned with the rhythms of the world around it. And then there is the lesson of giving. A tree does not take more than it needs. It gives oxygen, shade, nourishment, shelter. When it dies, it does not simply disappear. It gives its final energy back to the soil, enriching the earth so that new life may grow. It is a cycle of generosity, a reminder that true abundance comes not from hoarding, but from sharing. What if we too lived with this mindset? What if we saw our success not as something to be kept, but something to be passed on? What if we measured our impact not by what we accumulate, but by what we contribute? The forest does not exist in isolation. It is part of something greater, just as we are. We are not separate from nature. We are part of it. The trees we walk beneath, the air we breathe, the cycles of life and death that shape the natural world, they are not distant from us. They are within us. We are bound to the earth, to its rhythms, to its lessons. And so, as we step away from the towering wisdom of the forest and back into our own world, we must ask ourselves, what have we learned? That survival is not about standing alone, but about supporting one another. That growth is not about speed, but about resilience and balance. That the greatest impact we can have is not in what we take, but in what we give. As we carry these lessons with us, a final thought lingers. If trees are capable of such wisdom, if they have flourished for millions of years through cooperation, patience, and generosity, then what more do they know? What secrets still lie hidden in the whispers of the leaves and the murmurs of the roots? Science is only beginning to uncover the depths of tree communication, their intelligence, and their role in shaping the world around them. And so, before we leave the forest behind, one question remains. What if we have only just begun to listen? The forest has spoken to us in ways we never imagined, through roots and fungi, through whispers in the wind, through silent acts of care that transcend generations. We have walked among towering elders, watched their young reach for the light, and marveled at the unseen threads that connect them all. And now, as we prepare to step beyond the woods and return to the world we know, we are left with one final question. What will we do with this knowledge? Science has opened a door, but on the other side lies mystery. There is so much we have yet to understand about trees, their awareness, their intelligence, their place in the grand design of life on Earth. Every new discovery reminds us that what we once dismissed as impossible is, in fact, happening all around us. Trees talk, they nurture, they warn, they grieve, they remember. What else might they do? And how might this change the way we see the world? Perhaps the greatest lesson of all is that the more we learn, the more we realize how little we truly know. The forest invites us not to seek definitive answers, but to remain open to wonder, to see the world not as a collection of separate beings, but as a living, breathing system of interwoven lives. The trees do not act alone, neither do we. We are all part of something greater, bound by invisible threads of cause and effect, of giving and receiving, of existence itself. So, the next time you find yourself standing beneath the canopy, pause. Breathe in the scent of the earth, the bark, the leaves. Close your eyes and listen, not just to the rustling of branches, but to something deeper, something older. The language of the trees is not spoken in words, yet it is there, carried through time, waiting for those who choose to hear it. And perhaps, in that quiet moment, you will understand what the trees have always known, that life is not about standing alone, but about growing together. That wisdom is not in racing to the top, but in rooting deeply. That true strength is not measured in how much we take, but in how much we give. The forest will always be there, whispering its lessons to those who listen. The question is, are we ready to hear them? As we leave this journey behind and return to our own world, may we carry a piece of the forest with us. May we walk with greater awareness, live with deeper connection, and honor the quiet wisdom of the trees. For they have been here long before us, and they will remain long after we are gone. And if we are willing to learn, they will continue to teach us, not just about themselves, but about ourselves, and about the future we have yet to grow.